Greetings. My name's Nelson Ligon, and the name of my ministry is Executing His Word. And I've got a testimony kind of teaching to share with you all, and I've entitled this The Face of Satan. And I recently recorded my time where I overcame my fear of witnessing, where I didn't witness to anybody and was convicted of it and finally repented and began to witness. And shortly after that, where I finally decided to start witnessing, the Lord spoke to me about going to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And I knew nothing about Mardi Gras, I knew nothing about New Orleans, but I felt like He was telling me to go. And this is where I had an encounter which had to do with fear. And so Mardi Gras is a party that happens in New Orleans around Easter and Lent every year. It's from February, changes the date from February to March, but thousands of people come, and pre-Katrina there were millions of people that came. The streets were packed. It's not as busy nowadays as it used to be, but it's still very busy. And there's a lot of opportunity to share the gospel on the streets. And many of us take signs and stand in the middle of the street and let people read signs and come up and start talking to us. So we do. So the very first time that the Lord spoke to me about going to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, I knew nothing. I didn't know other people even witnessed. I knew very little about witnessing or anybody that really did it. So I did some research. And in my research, I found a couple of groups that took teams to New Orleans to witness. And I was kind of, okay, this is good. And there was one group called, Denny Nisley was the overseer of it. And he took about 300 people to go to New Orleans to witness. I didn't know him. I knew of him, but I didn't know him. And so I called him and just asked, I said, I feel like the Lord's telling me to go to New Orleans, and I don't know anybody, or I don't know what to do, and I notice you take a group. Is there any chance I might be able to go with you? So we talked a little bit, and he said, yeah, come on. Just fly in, and we'll pick you up at the airport. You just stay with us like the 4 or 5 days that we're there for Mardi Gras, and we'll take you back to the airport. So very strange for me to do something like this. I literally knew nobody. I didn't know Denny Nisley. I didn't know a single person of his group that was going. I was just blind to what to expect. So we went there, and we had many prayer meetings, and I learned that he was going to break the 300 people, 200 or 300 people, up into groups of 10 or 15. And then the important thing that I needed to remember was that you pick a partner, and you would never leave that partner's side. And he stressed that over and over again, that you do not go off on your own, no lone rangers, you stay with your partner at all times. And so I picked the partner picked me, we didn't know each other at all, and I felt at peace about the guy that was going to be my partner. So anyway, we started prayer meetings the night before we were going to go out on the street. And we stayed in a church. We slept on the floor in the church, the men in one area and the women in another. And we used air mattresses. But at this church, we had a prayer meeting, and we were praying and getting prepared to go out in the street to witness. And as I said, I didn't even know how to even talk or share the gospel or anything. But during this time, one of the elders in the church went to Denny and said, this guy over here, I feel like I've got a word for him. And he shared with Denny, I guess, or some of the leaders, the word, and they talked about it and then felt like go ahead and share it. And this guy's somebody they trusted and knew very well. So this deacon comes up to me and he said, this is going to sound very strange. I don't know you, but I feel strongly the Lord's telling me to warn you about something that's coming. And he said, on this trip, you are going to see the face of Satan. And so that's not exactly a very encouraging word to hear, but I did take it in, and I was going, okay, I don't know what that means, but I told them thank you, and there you go. So we started going out onto the streets, and I'll tell you this, this was way back at the beginning of when guys started bringing teams. There were 5 guys from Christ for the Nations in Dallas that initially set out to go to New Orleans, and they had a group of about 20, and they grew and grew and grew, and ended up dividing up into 5 groups, all still friends, but having 200 or 300 people coming, like 1,000 people. And so Denny was one of those groups, and so anyway, we're going out there, but it was intense. And it was back in the day when the city really did not like us there, trying to break up people's parties. And Denny signed us up. There are multiple parades in neighborhoods in downtown, one right after another for 3 or 4 days nonstop, some of them huge. And so there's this one neighborhood parade Denny signed our group up to participate in. And in this group, we were marching and we're handing out tracts and just had signs about the Lord and stuff like that. But we weren't obnoxious or anything. But we felt tension doing this. And then all of a sudden, the leaders of the parade started trying to separate us from the parade and literally broke us up and pushed us out of the parade, and we were scattered, and there was like 200 of us, and we had young people, teenagers, we had old people, and everything in between. And literally we were divided up like we'd be 2 or 3, and we didn't know where we were. They literally kicked us out of the parade, and those of us that were just there, we had no idea where we were because we were part of the group and part of the march. So it was pretty bad. And I remember one older lady that was close to us. She was kind of like getting very upset, and she wasn't in good health. And so it wasn't a good thing. But anyway, to make a long story short, Denny went to the city and said what the police did and what the leadership did to us was completely unacceptable. And we're allowed to participate in this thing just like anybody else. So a guy by the name, many people know this guy, Jay Sekulow. He's a Christian attorney that defends Christian events. He went to Denny and he said, this was completely not good, and I can bring this to court over you and make sure they don't ever do this again. So he threatened the city, and the city repented and said, we're sorry, we won't ever do that again. And Jay Sekulow had told Denny, he said, I could have gotten money for everybody on your team. And Denny said, no, they've said they're sorry, we don't want to sue anybody or anything like that. So that was the end of it. But that's the kind of intensity that was taking place in New Orleans with people that were Christians. And so over time, people started accepting us more and more. As I said, there are over 1,000 of us in different parts of the city, handing out tracts and standing with signs and just asking people to share the gospel with them. But that was one of the first moments I remember on my first trip. And then one night we went down, we broke up into teams, we went onto the street the first night, and I was with my partner, and we were witnessing and sharing the gospel. We were staying together. And then we're right in front of like a 7-Eleven. It was a convenience store right in the heart of Bourbon Street. And he said, I really need a drink. Need some water or Coke. I'd like to go get a Coke right inside this place. And I'm standing right on the front steps. And I said, well, I don't really need anything, so go ahead in and I'll just stay right here. And that little mistake really taught me something, because we separated for just a few minutes. And he went into the store, but I was right by the front door. And he went in to buy some Coke, and he was going to come back out. And in the time of our separation, which was not even 10 minutes, not very long at all, this guy came up to me, and he said, I started handing him a tract. And this guy looked at me and he says, you need to tear up that tract or I'm going to kill you right here and now. And I'm holding the tract in my hand and I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden I realized this was the face of Satan. That this was Satan threatening to kill me if I didn't stop handing out tracts. So I looked at the guy and said nothing. And I kind of froze. And I was going like, oh my gosh, my partner's not here. And so he's looking at me and he said it again. He said, did you hear me? I need you to take that tract and tear it up or I'm going to kill you right here and now. And so there again, I didn't say anything and I just kept looking at him. And so I was just started reasoning in my mind. I said, Lord, I can't tear this tract up. I could not do that. And so I said, Lord, if he's going to kill me, just take care of my family, my wife and my kids. But I'm not going to tear up this tract. But I knew enough not to say anything to him. I just kept my hand out with the tract and just kept looking at him. And then in a few minutes, he stepped back a few steps away from me. He says, tear it up or I'm going to kill you right now. And then a few more seconds, he stepped back further. Take the tract and tear it up or I'm going to kill you. But in the process, I wasn't saying anything. And he kept moving away. But I was overcome with fear because I really felt he meant it. And, you know, you can casually say you're going to kill somebody, but there was something about this guy that scared the living daylights out of me. So he kept moving back a few steps. He kept saying, tear up the tract, but kept moving back. He's almost across the street now. So I'm feeling a little relieved. And then my partner comes back out. And he looks at me and he said, you sure you don't want anything? I said, no. And the guy disappeared. And my knees just about buckled. I was going like, that was not good. And so I told my partner what happened. And I also told him, I said, we can't leave each other's side. Denny Nisley knows what he's talking about. You don't leave your partner even for a few seconds. So I was convicted over the authority issue, spiritual authority issue that we have when we share our faith. If you're part of a group, there's a leader. You need to pay attention to spiritual authority. It really means something. So anyway, that was the introduction to my witnessing anywhere, and it was with an encounter that I really said, wow. I made a decision not to tear up that tract. And I know it was important. And I don't know if it was for just that guy or for me, that I had to make up my mind, how far did I want to take this? I'm not afraid to share the gospel anymore. So that was a major, major teaching in my life that happened very soon when I first started witnessing. So the week went on, and another little incident which was crazy. The last night we were there witnessing, and it went real well. We shared the gospel, and I got much better sharing my faith. Testimonies is so important because it's just a personal thing that you can share pretty easy. But as you learn scriptures and things like that, you can talk about the grace of God, and men are all sinners, and that we need to repent, and we give our life to Christ, and different scriptures that fit in with all that. And I was learning that on the job training, and that's very important. If you have a fear of witnessing or you don't witness much, there's no better thing than training, not just being taught, but doing it. You learn as you go. So anyway, the last night was pretty funny because Denny initially, we were out really late to like 1 o'clock in the morning. And Denny initially had a couple of us in the car, and there's two of us that needed to get to the airport. I didn't realize that this wasn't like very good for the team. We needed to be at the airport like at 8 o'clock the next morning, and Denny was going to have to drive us to the airport. So Denny's looking at the two of us, and he said, listen, he said, I need to get some sleep. We got, another day before we come back, but you guys are leaving in the morning. He said, can I just take you to the airport now? And I went, okay. Like we stay there all night and wait for our planes. So the two of you, he dropped us off at the airport. And the craziest thing was that we saw thousands of people that had flown into Mardi Gras for Mardi Gras and now were leaving. And the weird thing about it was at Mardi Gras, a lot of people wear masks and dress up to look like somebody they're not. And the thing that we were noticing is they're coming into the airport, they're taking their mask off and paint and all kinds of stuff and getting ready to go back home and act normal. And so we witnessed all night long at the airport. We had divine appointments all night until our plane took off. And yeah, we were tired, but it was incredibly awesome. And it was just a God thing that Denny had to spend the night there. And so that was my first experience in New Orleans, and it was life-changing. And I just wanted to say that you've got to make up your mind and determine in your heart that you will not deny the Lord, that you will stand up for Christ. And I'd seen that I really had repented, and I was going to do that, because if I didn't cave in to a guy threatening to kill me, I wasn't going to cave into anything. So that was a major lesson I learned the first trip I went to New Orleans. God bless you. If you want to contact me, it's ministry@nelsonligon.com is my email. Ministry@nelson.com. Contact me. Our website is Executing His Word, all one word, executinghisword.com. Check us out if we can help you in any way. God bless. Thank you.